It should be.
Testing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The date is October 21st, 1996. We're Judith and Bob Hartenfeld. We're in the home of Jim and Anna Caire in Biloxi, Mississippi. We're making this tape for the World War II Veterans Project for the University of Tennessee. Jim was a prisoner of war of the Japanese during World War II, and he has kindly agreed to share his experiences with us. First of all, Jim, when did you join the service?
In May of 1939.
Okay, and what unit or units were you? I guess you were with more than one unit. What units were you with?
Well, at first I went to the 13th Coast Artillery in Fort Barrancas, Florida. And then later I was transferred to Barksdale Field, which was in the 3rd Bomb Group Light, which split in 1940, made the 27th Bomb Group and the 3rd Bomb Group. And I was transferred to the 20th.
Yeah, go ahead.
Then we was transferred in 1940, later in 40, to Savannah, Georgia, still in the 27th Bomb Group. At Hunter Field, we opened up the Hunter Field Air Base, which is still in effect, but is now under Army control.
And as you mentioned earlier, Savannah is where you and Anna met.
Yeah.
Where were you serving when you were captured by the Japanese?
We had been transferred after the maneuvers in 41 to the Philippine Islands and arrived there on Thanksgiving Day in 1941.
Okay.
It was aboard the USS Coolidge, President Coolidge, which was a regular resort type ship, but it was converted to troop carrier.
Well, were you expecting a war, Jim, when you went there to the Philippines?
No, we wasn't. We just thought it was just a normal build-up of new outfits, and they had to be stationed somewhere. But after we got to the Philippines, the Thanksgiving Day, we found out that the base we were supposed to go to was not completed. So we were bivouacked at Fort William McKinley, which was in Manila.
What time period was this again? What was
in 1941, from November, Thanksgiving Day, till the war broke out.
And that was December 6th,
7th December.
1941.
So then, where were you at? And you were staying in Savannah.
Yes.
Did you have any inkling that there was real trouble?
No, I knew nothing at all. I don't think any civilians really knew it was trouble for us. We were married in August 8th. We left Savannah in October. So first, back up. We were married in August on the 8th on a Friday. We left on Monday morning to come back to Louisiana for the maneuvers. And they excelled so well on their maneuvers that outfit was chosen to go what?
To a code word plum.
P-L-U-M.
Code word?
Everything was marked plum. But we later found out after we left Hawaii that plum was the Philippines.
Back up a little bit. When your outfit came back to Savannah,
Yeah.
then you left in October by troop train.
Yeah.
Some went one route and some went another, but you joined up in
San
California.
Francisco and Angel Island.
And then you went on Coolidge
That's
to,
right.
to the Philippines.
That's right.
Well, tell us a little bit about the trip on the Coolidge.
Well, to back up, after we had received all our shots, and they took us back from Angel Island, which was the depot, and put us aboard the Coolidge, and we left under the Golden Gate Bridge and went into Hawaii, of which we had a 6-hour liberty in Hawaii. We thought that was wonderful. Because we could get off the ship and go ashore. And then later, we got back on board after the 6-hour liberty. And we were told we would be traveling in convoy under blackout. We're not allowed any lights after dark on the ship whatsoever. We had a cruiser, the Louisville, which was our escort plus another ship. In Hawaii, we went to Guam, and we picked up some stuff in Guam that was to go to the Philippines. That's when we really knew definitely we were going to be in the Philippines. And then we went from Guam to the Philippines and landed in Manila on Thanksgiving Day, 1941. We were supposed to have an outstanding dinner aboard the ship, but they said, nope, get off. We've got to go to Shanghai to pick up the 4th Marines. Then we figured, well, something was fixing to happen, because they wouldn't be bringing the 4th Marines out of Shanghai. And they brought them back into the Philippines, because they were in the Philippines with us when the war broke out. And we bivouacked at McKinley, and we would go in to Manila at like a Special Liberty or something like that, and see the town. And I met the Hornbossels. Maybe somewhere along the line, you might have remembered reading about a lady that was captured, a civilian who was in Santa Tomas and had contracted leprosy. This is a lady that was, and she was later brought here to Louisiana at Carville, and they stopped the actual threat of leprosy here at Carville, and she remained there, and her husband remained with her there until she died. I've got to be friends with them because she worked at the Red Cross, coffee, donuts, and things in Manila.
Instead of having your Thanksgiving feast, what did you have?
Oh, we had frankfurters and grapes.
That's not much of a Thanksgiving dinner.
No, we didn't think so either.
Oh dear. So this was just before the war broke out in 91 that we're talking about
Yeah,
now.
it was about 2 weeks.
When were you captured?
On April the 9th, 1942.
So we're not
Bataan.
just a few months later.
Yes.
Okay.
What transpired between when the war broke out and you knew there was war to what were you doing during this time?
We were trying to defend Bataan because we never got our planes of Manila. We stayed in Manila till they ordered us out of Manila and got out in Oklahoma City. Well, I left Manila on the 1st of January with a lieutenant from Florida with a load of supplies. We picked up a 6 big truck and loaded it with supplies and took it down to Bataan. Once we got there after the 1st of January, that's where we stayed. And we later found out that we were going to be infantry. So
Because you had no planes.
we had no planes or equipment. And so the only thing that they could give us was World War I equipment.
You had World War I equipment at
That's
the
right.
beginning of World War II.
1903 Springfield rifle, which I had already been trained in at the Coast Artillery. So I was ahead of time, skating. And so the men who were big crew members working on planes and all had not been through basic training like I had. And so we had to teach them how to clean their weapons, how to cosmoline and stuff. They didn't even know what it was.
My goodness.
So you weren't. When did combat start then?
It started, well, we got into it after we got on the Bataan Peninsula because the other outfits were up above us, were falling back. We were the reserve line
So
until they
when
got back to us. Then from that,
so when was that about?
it was in January.
January. So it was from
In
January to April.
we
that this
became
was
the front
going on.
line. It was up there for 91 days without relief.
What was it like in the last days before you were captured?
Well,
Did you have supplies and food and water and?
no, we didn't. They kept cutting the ration down. They said they didn't have it. They didn't have it to give to us. And but later, I found out something a little different, which I'm not going to say it here, but I'll tell y'all later.
Okay.
Anyway, we all started getting a little weak and started losing a little weight because we weren't eating the food properly. And then when the Japanese put the final offense against us on the front line, they just had too much for us. We couldn't hold them, so we had to fall back.
Do you think things would have been any different if you had been better fed?
I think we might have fought just as hard, if not harder, if we'd have known we had the food and stuff to eat, and if we'd have had some equipment.
Yeah. So what, how did your capture happen? How did that take place?
After the front line fell, which we were on, we all went back as far back as we could to the point on Mariveles, which was on the point of the Philippines. And we found out that General King had met with the Japanese. He was in command of Bataan, and that he surrendered the Bataan Peninsula with the thoughts that maybe if he surrendered, it would save lives, which proved later was not true, that there was more lives lost than was anticipated from lack of food, lack of medicine, and the march itself.
Well, it's 91 days. Now, did you have tents, or were you right out?
We were in foxholes.
Foxholes. And so for 3 months, that was home?
That was home.
It's jungle.
Jungles, foxholes.
And then after you were captured, was the march started immediately?
It was started in sections. It might be 500 in one section and 1,000 in another. It was all not one continuous march.
I've always had the idea that it was one continuous march. I
It
guess
was
just
a march.
the pictures
It
I've
was
seen.
called a continuous march, but there were groups, because that's what all the guards that they could allow to be with a certain number of people to make sure that nobody would take over the guards.
You had to accumulate from coming out of the jungles.
They had accumulated us, and gradually everybody finally ended up on Mariveles Field at Mariveles, which was the tip in the start of the march.
Well, after King surrendered, then that's when they started gathering you up.
Gathering us up.
And did you know anything about this surrender or anything?
Yes, we had heard about it.
And so you knew they were coming.
Yeah.
That you were.
We didn't know what to expect, really, as to where they would put us, or what they would take us, or how they would take us off the Bataan. But it ended up that we did the march,
You did the march.
which is called the Death March.
Yeah, I was a child at that time, and I remember hearing about it. I was in elementary school. I remember that.
What was your mood, knowing that it was hopeless, that it was just a matter of time till they actually captured you?
Well, when the surrender was through, that was automatic capture right there.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Some of the guys got out by boat and got over to Corregidor, which surrendered a month later. But we didn't. We stayed there, and we were made to do the march. I was in one bunch we had just about 500 in our bunch. We were one of the small bunches. But they'd start us marching, and we'd go all day long, maybe no water, no food. That night they might give you a cup of rice, maybe a swallow of water. You'd sleep on the ground. And you'd do that every day. And one day you'd march maybe 10 miles forward. The next day they said, well, they're catching up too much with the ones in front. Let's go back 10 miles.
Oh.
Do that. But if anybody fell in the bunches with, you wasn't allowed to pick them, help them, carry them, or help them march. They were bayoneted, or else they were taken out and shot. This is what the General King had hoped it wouldn't happen.
That was his whole purpose for surrendering, was to save lives, and it turned out that wasn't the way it worked.
And some places the Filipinos would try to give us food and water along the line. The Japanese would take them and beat them or kill them. And it was rare. But fortunately, in my particular section, there's 5 of us individuals got together as a group. And what we did is 2 would carry the gear, whatever gear we had, left after the Japanese had searched us and took everything of value. And 3 of us would stray along the sides of the march and get whatever we could. And that night we shared. And we did that for the whole march, which was around 70 miles.
So how long did the march take?
10 days. After 10 days of marching, we got to San Fernando. And there they loaded us up on little box cars. It wasn't much bigger. It was the square there to the room here. They put so many on, you couldn't sit down, you couldn't lay down, you had to stand up. And from San Fernando, they took us to Tarlac, which was up the railroad line. And we unloaded there, and we marched about, well, I guess maybe 10 miles more to the main camp, which they had set up, Camp O'Donnell.
What were you thinking about during this march, Jim? What kind of thoughts would you have? I can't begin to envision something that...
Well, most of us were fairly young, in our early 20s, and I think at that age you just took things as they came, and you made the best of what you could. And the thing about it is that the Japanese did not recognize the Geneva Convention, and so we were not prisoners of war, we were captives.
Oh, so there's a difference.
And they could do whatever they wanted with us. It made no difference because they did not believe the Geneva Convention.
What if that was their attitude? If they had absolutely no concern for what happened to you, why did they bother to have you march that long distance?
Well, to get us off of Bataan so that they could get better position towards Corregidor, to shell Corregidor.
But did you ever figure out why they didn't just kill everybody and forget about it?
The only thing we could figure is that they had needs of able-bodied people to do work.
They needed you. That's what I wondered. If they needed you to work.
They needed able-bodied people to do the work.
Okay.
And so when we got to O'Donnell, the camp wasn't finished. It was under construction, and we slept on bamboo platforms, and there was one water faucet. Maybe you could get water after you stood in line for 3 hours, or else they'd put you on a detail. If you were unlucky, you stayed off the detail.
Did you know where you were going in this march, or were you just marching day by day and just taking...
We sort of had heard mention that they was taking us to San Fernando because they had to get us off. That's the only way they could get us off the peninsula, is to take us to San Fernando and get us out of the way. And we knew that much, but after that we didn't know where we would be because we hadn't heard of any camp. And when we ended up in O'Donnell, we knew that that was the ultimate. And they took work details out of O'Donnell, and I was there for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And they picked myself plus 149 other men, two able-bodied men, to go on a detail. This is where that picture I showed you, the bridge came in.
Yeah.
And so we down, they took us down by truck. And we rode the trucks and went down through Manila, went on down into Lumban Laguna, which is where the bridge was at. And in the process of going through there, we were divided into 3 groups of 50. And each group had a different color armband. I had the white. A friend of mine from up Crystal Spring, Mississippi, had a pink armband, and the other band was green. Well, everything was going fairly decent because the Filipinos, the guards down there, were pretty good. They let the Filipinos lay food along the road, we'd pick it up and take it in. And we had a Filipino doctor, which was fortunate, that came into the camp and tried to treat as much as he could. And they didn't say anything about it. But one night, the Filipino guerrillas came in and shot up the guards in the camp. And one American got out, escaped. And they brought in outside, more new guards from outside to take over the guard's position. And this colonel said, do you know that since one American got away, that 10 men would have to be shot? Well, we were told that before, we knew that. So what they did first was pick the 10 men that slept close to where this man that escaped slept. Well, this fellow Thornton, myself, was 2 that slept, was picked in the original 10 to be shot. But fortunately, someone looked at the armbands and they saw that he had a pink one and I had a white. It was a different color from the man that got away, so they pulled us out. We'd already been standing out there in front of the fire squad.
Oh my goodness.
And so they pulled us out. But we were made to watch the execution. And what made it really bad was that this one kid from Fort Bragg, California, had to watch his brother shot because his brother was in the green outfit.
Oh my goodness.
And he was in a different color. And so we went ahead after that and finished the bridge. And we were told we were going to another bridge detail up in North Luzon. But to come to find out, when we got to Villa Bed Prison in Manila, which we stopped overnight, the guerrillas were active up there at that bridge, and so they took us into Cabana to One, which was the main camp. They had been the new main camp.
But you had already been wounded by this time?
Before
We were wounded
before
before we were captured.
I was captured.
Oh, okay.
Shrapnel.
And
And the shrapnel there when the Japanese were shelling. And this is healed all right, and I haven't had any trouble with it. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
But anyway, we went back into Cabana to One, and that was in Camp 1, Camp 3, and then they had another camp which we didn't want to be in, which we weren't in. And so I didn't stay there very long either. I got out of there as quick as I could because you had better chances. They were burying men 50 at a time in one grave.
How were you able to get out?
Went on another work detail.
Did you say I want to go on
Yes,
this
ma'am.
work detail? And
And
you
so
were
they
able-
picked 50 of us. And we went back to Manila. We went back out to McKinley, where we originally started all of it.
Mhm.
And they put us up with the Japanese guards that were with us. Each truck had a guard with each American driver. And so we drove trucks in and around Manila, loading and stealing. The Japanese were stealing everything they could out of Manila and shipping it to Japan.
Mm.
And we had a Japanese lieutenant who spoke perfect English, but he never struck an American prisoner. He never hit one American prisoner in overtime on the detail, which was a year. Some of the guards were good, some were not. It depended on your luck of the draw.
Mm.
But anyway, this lieutenant was riding in my truck one day, and he mentioned to me one day he had a question. And I said, well, what is the question? He said, why are the Americans soldiers so cold-blooded? Well, you know, with something like that, you've got to stop and say, well, what's he trying to get at? So I stopped for a little bit and started. And I said, well, suppose you're sitting there minding your own business. Someone comes along and kicks you in the twat. What you going to do? I saw him over there, his face didn't say it. The expression was so, then directly a little smile came up. He says, you know, you're right. But that was the luck of the draw to have a good lieutenant.
Mhm.
Go back and talk about some of those camps.
But some of the punishments on this particular camp is
What camp was this one?
he's still at the truck driving
And this is
in
for at McKinley.
42 and 43. They would make you take your shoes and hold them out like this for hours.
For what? What did you
For
have to do
punishment.
to get punished?
Punished.
And
Whatever they considered. If you did something they considered wrong, you were punished.
For example, what?
You not answering proper, or not responding as quick as you should, or something like that.
A lot of it's different culture.
And
Japanese.
they would make you kneel down and put bamboo in here, and you'd lay back on it. And that sort of stops pressure on. And or they'd make you kneel, whatever they wanted to do. It's just you did it because you couldn't help it. But anyway, the truck detail lasted for about a year. And then we were in 1943. We were transferred down into a work detail in Manila still, at the port area. Well, to everybody that was in that area in the Philippines, choice detail, because you had ships where you could scrounge food and you could eat better. And sugar, we would unload a sugar ship and we'd come in with a sock full of sugar.
Where did these ships come from?
They were coming from south. The Japanese were bringing stuff back again to the Philippines.
So they were Japanese ships?
Yeah, they were all
Okay.
Japanese ships. And we would load oil, gasoline, 55-gallon drums. And when we got to ships that was being loaded on, we'd take the caps off, turn the bottom row upside down, and it would drain out into the hull, bilge. And we didn't know until after we got back from the war that while we were on that stevedore detail, we got credit for sinking 6 ships.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
All would drain out and then
Yeah.
it would catch on fire or explode.
One time we almost got caught at it. We put some on the wrong ship. So we turned them over right quick, put the top back on.
That was their way of sabotage.
So you did sabotage,
Oh yeah,
and
we did everything. we
because you turned these drums upside down, the oil drained out, the ships caught on fire.
could. And gasoline,
You were
blew up in
credited with
we saw 2 of them blow
sabotaging
up
6
inside
ships.
the Manila Bay.
Oh,
And we had Navy officers, and we were in groups, and we had Navy officers over us who knew all the ships and stuff.
did the other prisoners of war realize that this was being done? Did it help morale?
Yeah.
So they were aware that this was being done, even though they didn't know exactly
That's
who was
right.
doing it. So
And we would steal stuff off the ships. We were known as the 400 Thieves. But what made it a little bit better, I think, for most of us, they weren't as hard. But the Japanese civilian that was in charge of the detail and the American naval officer that was in charge of us, they knew each other in San Francisco.
oh,
So it made it a little bit easier.
What kind of sleeping quarters or living quarters? would
We
you-
had the terminal building, and we had wood platforms up off the floor, and we had latrines and everything there. We had our own cooks.
so this is
Did our
why
own
you were
cooking.
while you were working at the port.
That's right. Had our own cooks, and we pooled what little bit of money we could together, and they would go buy us extra meat and stuff.
Where did you get money?
Well, different things we would sell to the Philippines, or they would bring us money.
Okay.
The things you stole, you sold.
Yeah. Let me go back and reiterate something on the truck driving detail. The century I had, this one particular day we were hauling Singer-sewing machine parts and stuff that they were taking to send to Japan. Well, he was stealing stuff and putting it in one side of the truck, and I'd take half of it and sell it out the other side of the truck. And to the Philippines who needed it. And they were glad to get it. And he came back and looked at his thing, and he says, half of it was gone. He said, what? I said, the Philippines. He didn't get what.
Yeah, tell about some of these other camps.
Oh,
Yeah.
the one
You were
camp,
able-bodied, but a lot
We-
of them weren't.
yeah, we were very fortunate that we were able-bodied, and we had sick bay and a dentist.
Yeah, switch. I'm sorry, Jim, to interrupt. But,
You may not have been on camera all that time. Just been slouching
yeah,
away.
I've been
Oh, yeah,
watching.
but-
I see there's a little red light.
You forget that you're on the camera. You get involved in this.
But,
Well, I just been
told
sitting
me.
in front of a way.
Well, he probably just got Jim's picture, maybe.
But Jimmy, you were able-bodied. That's
Yeah,
why
we
you had
were
to go out
fairly
there. There were a
fortunate.
lot of people that were injured when they
Yeah.
came into camp.
Yeah, and they didn't get to go out on the details. Some of them
Sick.
did.
Some of them
But,
had their legs missing.
And down in one detail in Manila, especially at Nielsen Field, which was one of the worst, the members there would tell us how they would break a leg or break an arm to get on the detail.
People had dysentery.
Self-inflicted,
had malaria.
and
But
with no
was
medicine, they had dysentery, anemic dysentery. diarrhea, malaria, and no medicine to treat it with. And this is what caused a lot of them to go down. And not all the camps had fairly decent food like some of them did. Now, I consider myself very lucky.
Well, Anna was asking you to tell about some of the other camps.
Well, this is what I was telling you about Nielsen Field, which was, they were rebuilding an airstrip in Manila. And the guys, the guards there were sadistic. I mean, they beat on the Americans. I talked with several of them later, and they told me how they were treated, and that they would beat on them for just no cause at all, because maybe they wasn't pushing the wheelbarrow right. But anyway, they would deliberately break an arm or break a leg.
So what would happen to them then?
They would send them back to the main camp, come out of the lawn, and they'd get new ones in. So but the food wasn't very good or anything like that. Or they would get rice and maggots, and they wouldn't have time to clean it out, and they'd cook it all together.
That was protein.
That's protein, they said.
Snakes and
And, well, before the surrender, the snake and a monkey didn't have a chance. We would shoot them and cook them ourselves.
Well, that's understandable.
And they go on us. Well, they ate all the mules and the horses out of the 26th Cavalry. They had the Filipino Cavalry. They ate all the horses and mules. And then all the other animals started disappearing. Dogs didn't have a chance. But that was survival, I guess.
Yeah, at that time.
But then in 1944, that's when Leyte got hit. And we didn't know it at the time that Leyte was going to be hit, even in Manila. And so what the Japs started doing then was taking all the able-bodied American prisoners of war to Japan. And that boat trip wasn't very pleasant because it was about as bad as you could get. It overcrowded you in the hold. Sanitation conditions were bad. And this one ship that I was on, they put a lot of all the people in number one hold, but it was too crowded, so they took half of them and put them in another hold in the back. And we went and stayed out in Manila Bay for I don't know how long, because we would get 1 cup of rice a day, maybe a half a cup of water while we were on the ship. That was it.
And how long were you on the ship?
Well, it took us about 10 days before the convoy took off. And then it went out and got together and was going up north of Luzon to what they call the Bataan Islands. The American Wolfpack laid in there, the submarines laid in there. And none of the ships that carried prisoners of war would want this POW ship. The Americans didn't know it. Even in between islands, they didn't know the Americans bombed and strafed and sunk ships, but they didn't know that they were American prisoners of war. So they hit the convoy we were on, but they didn't hit my ship. They hit some of the naval vessels and things like that. And we went on into Formosa, and they went into port there and loaded sugar. We had to come up out of the hole, open up the hatch, and they loaded the sugar in the hole below us. Well, we had been stevedoring for almost a year, and we knew how to get down in there without taking hatch boards out. So I went down there and I come out of there with 20 pounds of sugar. And we had sugar.
How about the conditions on the boat?
Oh, it was pitiful. The train was up on top side, and you had to wait to go up. Or if you didn't, you got sick, they'd put a bucket down in, that was it. And people would get sick and they just didn't have a chance.
Standing there.
Yeah, it's just about standing alone.
And how long were you on this ship?
Well, it took us, after we left Formosa, it took us about 4 or 5 days to get into Oji, Japan.
And how long did it take you to get to Formosa?
The
You
whole
came
trip
from
was
Leyte
how long?
to
The
Formosa.
whole trip was, I guess, maybe from the time we got on the ship in Manila till we got to Japan was about maybe 15 to 20 days.
That's a long time
Yes, it is.
to be standing up.
And when the convoy got hit, they covered up the hatch. And they stood on top with machine guns so nobody would come up. There wasn't no way you could get off the ship if you got hit. But anyway, that ship didn't get hit and they went on like I told you before. And we landed at Moji and they took all of our belongings was thrown in one pile, which was left. And I managed to save a canteen cup and a spoon and chopsticks. And then there was a bunch picked to go out one detail. We scattered to different details in Japan. We went to Oyama, which was a nickel mine, which I'll show you pictures of. And there we did open air mine. We'd ride a little train out to the mine, work out there, and we'd take our lunch, which was a little box about like this, and be rice, and we'd have watery soup out there with hot tea, and that was lunch. And breakfast was just off-cooked rice with tea. Supper was the same thing. And they had the rice mats raised up like that. And we were each given 2 blankets when we got to Japan, but that wasn't enough to keep you warm because where we was, it started snowing in October and stayed on the ground till May. And we'd have to go out and work in the snow in the open air mine. The ground would freeze and you could hardly dig it. And dynamite, it was, you had to load it in a cart and take it down to the dumps and load it into the car and they take it into the smelter. So they started working us more at night in the smelter, which was good because it was warm. And
I guess there's a little humor to that, but
we ate sweet potato leaves and stuff like that, whatever we could get. And that went on till in the latter part of the summer, or the middle of summer, I contracted pleurisy in 1945. I was put in sick bay. And no medicine or anything there. They tap your lung to get that out, but mine was in pockets. And you had to tap several places. But he said, put a pillar in your stomach and you grab your toes and lean over. Well, that would spread your ribs. And you could go through your ribs and drain it.
This was a Japanese doctor or the
No,
Filipino?
we had an American doctor.
An American doctor.
Yeah. And no medicine, no pain killer. You did it without anesthetic. But anyway, summertime, we got along much better. And on August the 15th, 1945, we woke up, got up, and there's no Japanese guards in the camp.
But they had left during the night?
That was the day the war ended.
Yeah.
They had left because they didn't want to stay around because some of the Americans would kill them, especially that interpreter they called. He did a lot of bad things to the Americans. He had no reason to because...
So this is the interpreter you were telling us about earlier.
Huh?
This is the interpreter you were telling us
That's
about
right.
earlier.
That's right.
Can you tell a little bit about that for the tape?
Yes, we never expected him to get back to the States, but I was supposed to go to the dentist one day, and he was taking me, but he was the one that had broken the tooth to get it fixed, but I never did get there. So that was part of his treatment against me. And he'd take other Americans and put them in water up to here. They'd sit in water overnight.
Up to their chins.
And by the galley. And just things like that.
And there wasn't any real reason for this. He just decided that he wanted to do something
That's
like
right.
that. Now this was the interpreter you were telling us about earlier, the one who was an American citizen.
That's right.
Who had been sent back to Japan and indoctrinated or whatever there.
He had gone back to Japan on a call from the government over there to finish school, get schooling and stuff, but then they got him over there and they made him interpreters.
And he was made an interpreter and sent to your prisoner of war camp.
That's right.
So because he knew English real
American,
well
yeah.
and knew a little bit about America, having lived here, he was probably more
He
dangerous.
knew how to get to the best of us.
Yeah.
did you know anything, Anna? Did you get any information during all these years?
You know, you see, when they first went over, we didn't hear anything. There was we knew it was war. We didn't get any information, so they listed him as missing in action. Well, at that time, they were supposed to be missing in action for a year and then be declared dead after a year. But because we couldn't get any information out of Japan, they extended that just to let him continue on his being missing in action. So I really didn't know whether he was dead or alive. And then towards the end, I got those little
Postcards that you showed us.
A lot of people didn't believe that they were from him. And I said, well, that was Jimmy's signature. I knew that was his signature. And like he said, he would mention people he remembered that I knew. So I was living on high hopes. Jimmy told me he was coming back, and I knew he was coming back. Of course, I didn't know when he left. I didn't know where he was.
So you were married in August. In October of 1941, he left, and he did not get back until sometime in the fall of
I think we got back
1995.
together in October of 45.
So that was 4 years.
Yes, after we got back, after the war was stopped, we got a message from, they came in by plane and dropped a message to us to stay in the camp and don't leave it, that they would come in and get us by train. And so we stayed in the camp, and then they started dropping food into us. From Tennesseans, the bombers come over and got food into us. And this one Canadian got hit by a case of peaches. He grabbed that case of peaches like this, and he said, "That's mine."
Now you can
And
see
you
why.
couldn't get it from him either. But they, it wasn't very long after that they came in with the train, the Americans on it, and picked us up. We had English and Canadians in camp with us. And they took us into Yokohama, where the 142nd General Hospital was. When we got there on the pier, they wouldn't let us go aboard the hospital ship until we had completely stripped and been deloused
Yeah.
and given clean uniforms to go aboard the ship with.
But how was your health at the time that you were?
I was still suffering from the pleurisy, but my normal weight when I was taken prisoner of war was around 180 to 190 pounds. And when I came back and was weighed at the hospital, I weighed 108 pounds.
Well, you had an inadequate diet for a long time.
That's
I
right.
can't imagine how you could even work, Jim.
Yeah.
Well, either that or beaten.
You were highly motivated.
You were motivated by just survival.
That's right. My mother and my grandmother both said that I would always make it back because they knew I could take care of myself.
Tell what your soup is made.
Oh, soup, fish heads. And if you're lucky, you could move over a fish eye and get around it. But this cup had
Many a cup of fish head soup in it.
what we did is, you remember they had the rim. Roll, this was a roll
Yeah.
top. We beat that out to have that much more room.
So you could make a deeper
And the
bowl.
spoon we ate with,
Mm.
quartermaster spoon. And this pipe, I never smoked, but I had a pipe.
Why
I
did,
kept it.
why did
I don't know. I never smoked. I think that's one thing that helped me a lot is that I didn't smoke. And a lot of the guys were swapping food for cigarettes.
Oh, and smoking isn't good for you anyway.
No,
So
that's right.
if you're not in very good health and not eating properly,
Well,
that'll make it worse.
Neither one of us smoked. But anyway, when I got on board the hospital ship, they finished tapping my lung, but they had medicine to ease the pain. And I was nurtured back, and the food was much better. But unusually lucky I was. I met this man that I had known in Savannah, Georgia. Was a crew member, and he was a baker. So he told me every night, says, "You come down to the cruise galley."
Oh,
And I went down there and I'd get me a steak and good hot bread.
so how long did it take you to get back to a normal weight and pretty good health?
We in September, they moved us off the USS Marigold, which was the 142nd General Hospital, to the USS Rescue, which was a Navy hospital ship, and brought us back to the States via Guam, Hawaii, and San Francisco. to Letterman General Hospital. The skipper said, this is the last time we have to run some of those bad horses. And so he put it at full speed all the way. It took us about, I guess, 4 days to warm. We didn't linger very long. We picked up some people along the way, some patients and stuff. And it was around the 1st of October, I think we were back in San Francisco. When we got out from the Golden Gate Bridge,
When you
as we got in sight of the Golden Gate, we could see this big banner across it. Welcome home, job well done. And here comes 4 or 5 little boats with bands playing, all them people waving away from us. And this was a beautiful sight for me.
Oh, yeah.
To know that I had made it back. But anyway, while I was on the hospital ship, I saw many of the men that wanted sweets, candy, ice cream. I wouldn't even touch it. I wanted solid food. I think this is why today I'm in as good a condition I am today, because I didn't go for even rich food, sweets and stuff. I built food that built me back. And when we were in the Letterman General Hospital, you're going to die laughing at this. We had a ramp nurse that she said, we kept telling her, bring us grapefruit, bring us orange juice, we need it. She said, she fools are drinking us dry. She said, what are you doing with it? I said, you want to know? So we go knock on the latrine door and say, fire in the hole. That's the password for when a woman comes around. And we open the door and we set up a bar. She says, you fools.
I think you deserved
They
it.
treated us really wonderful. They gave us special suits to wear while we were in the hospital, convalescent suits. And we could go downtown in them. And we'd go downtown, if you ordered a meal, you couldn't pay for it. They recognized the suits.
Mm-hmm.
You'd go and say you went into a bar, if you wanted a beer or something like that, you couldn't pay for it. So that went on the whole time we were at Letterman General. And then one day they asked us if we wanted to go to a football game at St. Mary's University. I said, yeah, but I said, I don't have a leather jacket. Well, this major threw me his jacket. He said, "What?" He said, "If they salute you, salute them back." So I went to the football game. Then they asked us after treatment and so forth, they asked us which hospital would we like to go to. Further transfers to another hospital. There was none of them that had respiratory except Denver and Santa Fe, New Mexico. So I picked Santa Fe, New Mexico. And after I got there, Captain Hancock was here, Air Corps liaison officer. He says, "Would you like a trip of 2 weeks to Miami with your wife? Or would you like your wife brought to Santa Fe, New Mexico?" I said, "Well, let's see. Let's bring her to Santa Fe, New Mexico." Huh? I was still sick. They wouldn't give me leave or anything. And they were taking tests to see. They swore I had TB, but it proved negative. I told them, I said, "I'm not here for TB. I'm here with pleurisy." And so they finally proved that it wasn't TB. But anyway, Captain Hancock arranged the thing, and I'll let her tell you about her trip.
Okay.
He called me first, I think.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little louder and make sure we can hear you?
I think he called me first. When I was on air, walking on air, and he was alive.
So this is the first you'd heard from him.
I believe I had received a telegram saying that he was a prisoner of war by that time. And then I got word that he was, the war was over, of course, and he would be released then. So when he called me from, did you call from Santa Fe?
Santa Fe.
Said I could make the trip out. So I guess the military put it in action because I received a telegram that I could come, so I carried it out to Chatham Field at that time, Tennesseans. I went out, poor little old me, never been anywhere, rode the bus, transferred all over Savannah to get to Chatham Field, and they made the arrangements for me to fly to Santa Fe to meet him. And they arranged for me to have a private military plane. I was the only passenger. I had a pilot, co-pilot, navigator, and they put a female military lady on to be my chaperone. That was way back then.
Yeah.
And they made all the arrangements that we would leave. I believe it was leave the next day. They carried me through the weather room, showed me everything, how everything would work and all that. Carried me back to Savannah, to the city, in a staff car, and I said, "Well, I have to get some money." So they dropped me off at the bank to get some money, and then I was working at Savannah Gas Company at the time. So after I left the bank, I was going to the gas company to tell my people what I was going to do. When I got to the gas company, there was a phone call there waiting for me from Chatham Field that the weather was changing and would have to leave right away. So I was going to leave the next day. They had informed me that I would have slacks to ride in the plane. And I said, "Well, I haven't bought slacks yet." I said, "Forget the slacks. We'll put you in coveralls. We have to leave right now, or we can't get out for maybe 2 or 3 days because of the weather." Well, I wasn't ready. So there was an old retired gentleman that just happened to be at the gas company. He says, "Lorraine," he said, "I'll take you to the house." So he carried me to the house. When I got to the house, the staff car was waiting to pick me up, and that's how fast I moved. So I just goodness, I think I had packed a suitcase maybe the night before. So I threw the suitcase in and we took off from Chatham Field. I hadn't told my family yet that I was leaving. Maybe that's just how fast it happened. So I think we were probably flying close to Memphis because we had to refuel, I think, at Memphis, and we could spend the night there. They said, "Have you notified him that you're coming?" I said, "Not unless you did." They said, "No." So they radioed to the hospital that I was on the way. Well, we got on to, we stopped at Oklahoma City for fuel, and we had, I think, a cup of soup from the Red Cross canteen. And then we went on into Santa Fe. And they were anxious to leave. They just were going to dump me, but I had to get out of this coveralls because that was government property. And I wanted to be pretty. I hadn't seen them for 4 years. They hardly gave me time to get out of the coveralls. There was another staff car waiting there to take me to the hospital. Yeah. So I did get a picture of the plane. They had me in the cockpit. They let me take my picture of that, and I had to go back to coveralls. Jumped in the staff car and went to the hospital, and then I got scared. I wasn't knowing. Because I didn't know whether he was injured, didn't know whether he was blind or a leg missed or anything. So then I really got scared. I thought, if I have to walk down that ward and pick him out, I just won't be able to do it. When I got to the hospital, thank goodness, they were very thoughtful. They had brought him up to a private room. The minute I saw him, I was home. From then on, it
They had me in a little room, so.
but I was queen for the day.
Oh,
As far as they
nice.
knew at the time that I was the first civilian to fly in a military plane, but now whether that's true or not, I
They
don't
had
know.
that set up that way, and all returning people never had a choice. So
But I was so excited.
we stayed out there till December when I was discharged.
You were able to stay out there that long?
Yeah.
Oh.
I got the Red Cross ladies found me a room in San Fernando. I stayed there for how long? 6 weeks.
Yeah, till December.
Yeah, till December.
December 8th, when I was
We were out there for
discharged.
Thanksgiving. I knew we were there for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And it worked out okay at the gas company?
Yeah, I didn't have to quit my job.
Oh, so we didn't have to worry about the gas
And,
company.
we went, when we got,
Anyway, my trip was a round trip. And so the time came to come back, he was my passenger.
I was their guest.
The plane was for me.
And they flew us to Jackson, Mississippi, where my mother and dad met me,
Oh,
and took me back to Natchez, where I grew up.
We spent Christmas in Natchez.
Spent Christmas in Natchez.
And then we
that was
went-
probably the best Christmas either one of you ever had.
Mhm.
Mhm.
It was exciting.
Well, have you had any moods that you've gone through, Jim, since you've come back in this whole experience?
Well, I guess she might have mentioned it. I wouldn't say anything for a long time.
About 20 years that we
Finally,
didn't talk about it.
I started getting back with the reunions, from prisoner of war reunions. And when you got together, you started loosening up a little bit. And it's good to get back together with the men. I mean, you have a lot of fun.
Yeah, but for 20 years, he didn't talk about it. Our children grew up, he didn't talk about it. They knew it because I told them, but he never talked about it. He was nervous. I said, be quiet. Daddy's nervous. You'd almost have to tiptoe around. But he went through some hard times, and I didn't know how to help him because he wouldn't talk about it. He didn't know his story. He had stomach cramps, which I don't know now is nervous.
Well, I hadn't been bothered with the pleurisy. It still hurt. Because every time you take a deep breath, your ribs rub against your lung, and that's what causes the pain.
But those
But it
stomach,
finally cleared up.
How long did it take you to get over the pleurisy?
Several years.
Several years, and
And
because all that time was building up strength.
yeah. Well, what did you do after the war, work-wise? How long was it before
well,
you were able
I
to
did
do
several
anything?
different types of
First, you were
jobs.
discharged,
Yeah.
Discharge.
which I don't think you should have done.
Then I had all that back pay coming, so I didn't need to work.
For how long?
From 1941 to 1945.
What did you do? Oh, yeah, you had the pay coming from them.
But
But I worked with this fruit vendor in Natchez that I knew real well. I had worked with him before I went to service. And he gave me a job and so paid me fairly well, and it kept me going. And then finally something, I don't know what it was, something came about that I decided we'd go back to Savannah.
well, I'll tell you what it was. You couldn't walk down the street and somebody talk to him or mention something or ask him questions. And he said, I'll never get over this. I said, I have to do this. And he just pulled up left and went to Savannah.
And they didn't ask him the questions in Savannah because not as many people knew.
Well, because he was hometown boy and
Yeah,
Natchez.
yeah.
He'd been there all his life and everybody knew him.
And then I went to a business school, got some more schooling. And
So you had the GI Bill for that.
yeah. And then they came out with a Circular 6, which said I could go back into the service, whatever disability that I had, and go back in the rank I came out with, which had been a year and a half before. So I went back into service.
And what did you do in the service?
They gave me a new job. I went to finance school in St. Louis, and for the basic course, then they sent me to Mariveles, Florida, and I went back, discharged from there, and went to Savannah and re-enlisted there again, and we moved on out to Texas. But I went back while I was in Savannah. I was sent back to finance school for the second advanced schools, which gave me some more college credits. And then the different schooling that I got, management and other types of school they gave us, it gave me that much more college credit through the service. We went to England, and I went to England in 1948 and opened up 2 finance offices when the American troops went back into England. And I opened up one at Marham and Mariveles and came back to the States. And then I transferred to Austin, Texas, which we liked very much. I was there for 4 years.
So how long were you in the service?
24 years altogether.
So that's from the time you first enlisted or were drafted. Were you drafted?
No,
or-
ma'am. No, ma'am.
You
No,
enlisted.
never a draftee.
You enlisted, right?
Enlisted in regular service.
Yeah, okay.
And we went to Europe, Biggs in El Paso for 3 years in France. While over there, finance and accounting in the Air Force merged into what they call accounting and finance. It's all one section now. So all the finance people had to go to the accounting school, and all the accounting people had to go to the finance school. So we all went up to Germany, and so we got that much more additional credits in college. And then we came back. We went to San Fernando, and then we went down. I went down to Harlingen for
11 months.
11 months and closed out the base at Harlingen Air Force Base, and then went to Big Spring from there. And that's where I retired from the service.
And were you able to go?
Oh, yes,
She was able to go to
everywhere I went.
when
She
you were in
went.
Germany and.
I stayed
We
in
was-
France at the time. See, that was just a...
It was just a short tour, but and then I got retired in 1964. And we came back to Natchez.
After we went to Japan 3 times.
Well, yeah, I went back to Japan 3 times. Funny thing, twice with the same outfit I went over with in 1941.
Oh, for heaven's sake!
And was with them for 4 years.
You have no questions?
Yeah, we've answered some of these. You mentioned that he didn't want to talk about it for 20 years or so, and yet you knew there was a problem because he had upset stomach and he was nervous all the time. And,
We wouldn't let you help.
yeah.
Those prisoners of war, when they came back, they were just, a lot of them just clammed up. They didn't know how the people would accept them. I think that was part of it. You know, they thought that I think some of them thought that people would think that they shouldn't have surrendered.
Oh,
That
they
we
shouldn't
might have
be.
been quitters.
Oh,
And you didn't know
Some people would.
like your Vietnam deal was. You went through that, and you know that. And I could sympathize with them because they weren't recognized like they should have been.
no. But,
But I was young. I didn't know to think that I could go seek help for him because I didn't know what his problem was.
yeah.
And none of them were talking.
Well, Jim, did you think to go anywhere to get help?
Well,
Would you have thought of that?
I didn't really realize that the situation, I would guess.
You didn't realize what your problem was?
That's right. And then gradually, we started getting to go to seeing other prisoners of war, and I think it's changed everything. And like now, today, to show you, I still go to the VA and give talks.
Mhm.
And every year, new psychiatrists come aboard. And Dr. Jones has me come out and talk to them. And what the experience they went through and how would be the best way to get them to talk. And it's been working real good. I've done it for 4 years now.
Probably helped him.
It helps too. And like I say, getting back with your prisoners of war, you went through it with you. You can sit back and laugh at it now, but it was serious.
Oh, of course.
And you didn't know what the next day would bring.
No.
But
See, his whole unit was captured. So this reunion that he has is all that whole
there
group.
was over
together.
800, around 900 of us in the unit. And I think one history book I got back there shows that approximately 300 of them made it back.
So that's,
And we've got now, I think, 100, close to 100 that's still living.
That meets this week.
yeah.
But you see, our bunch that meets, the widows, if I was to die, she's still eligible to go to the meeting. They're not
Well, they're
refused.
just like brothers and sisters on this. Just you see, they all know the
They
situation, know what
get
they went
together
through.
there, they're just like one big family.
Mhm.
And they have one at Fontana Village in North Carolina. Then the American Defenders of Botanic Corregidor meet once a year. The American ex-POWs meet once a year. The 27th Bomb Group meets once a year. They have a meeting in Sweet every year. That's a branch of the American Defenders of Botanic Corregidor. Then New Mexico has a beautiful reunion. I've only been to 2 of those, and they were really beautiful. And then they were over there with us, so I knew a lot of them. And the first time I went to one, we went over there and started talking to some of them. I says, I'm a survivor of the Botanic Death March. I said, I wonder if I could attend your reunion. She said, if you don't come, we'll get mad at you. That's the way they are. I mean, they put on a beautiful. She went downtown with 2 Gold Star mothers in Santa Fe. Tell her.
We went down and saw Indians, had the wares spread out.
Yes.
And we bought Indian bread and sat on a park bench, Indian bread.
So your best therapy was getting together with people who
I
had
think
gone
that-
through the same thing.
I think that helped a lot of them.
But it took you 20 years to be able to do that.
That's right.
And in the meantime, did you have nightmares?
If it did, I don't know
You
about
don't. You
it.
don't remember that. It was your
He had cold sweats. I think.
cold sweats.
Sweat.
And well, you said he was tense or nervous.
Mhm.
Nervous
Very
a lot.
nervous. He still had always be on the go.
Hmm.
And always
So
had something going on all the time.
so that made it kind of hard to live with him sometimes, maybe.
Yeah, but see, I didn't notice that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you'd been through so much. My
I was just so
goodness.
glad to have you back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But you know, I've given talks to the VA Building 2, and they were having trouble with some of the ex-POWs up there. And so I went and gave 2 talks in one day to the staff, the day staff and the night staff, and it has helped them a lot. They understand more that that's a nice machine.
Yeah.
That the prisoners of war, they only want what they're entitled to. And if you're individually, it's hard to get them to talk. But if you can get them together, you can group therapy is perfect. And this is what they're doing now.
Yeah.
And in Vietnam, they were having trouble, so I explained to them. I says, I know what some of the Vietnam veterans went through. I says, individually, they don't want to talk. But you get several of them together, and you've got a good therapy session going right there. And they're doing it.
What I was going to ask you a question. What about, has your perspective changed since you've been retired? I understand that sometimes people who are working, it's easier for them to kind of put that experience behind them while they're working and busy all the time. But once they retire, they have more time to think about it.
Well, I had started going to these reunions before I retired.
Before you retired,
So I don't think it had any effect on it.
What?
Well, I think you've talked about it more since you
Yeah,
retired.
yeah.
That's when you've been writing all this up.
Well,
too,
he's had
since-
more time
Mhm.
to talk about it.
I
He
thought-
worked, after he worked at the CB base, he worked CB base for 20 years. They didn't know he was a POW until he retired.
We had a reunion here, and I went to him, and the captain came down, the commanding officer of the base came down and sat by my desk. He said, Mr. Caire, can I sit beside you? I said, yes, sir. He says, it surprised me to find out that you were an ex-POW in the Philippines. He
He
says,
worked on that long day.
But you don't just announce it, hey, here
No,
I am,
no,
I'm a POW.
No.
I've had a lot of letters from them over there since I retired.
But I mean,
How do you feel about the Japanese people over against the guards and that? Do you see Japanese people in a negative or?
I don't think the young ones today over there really know what went on, or they haven't been told. The three trips that I made back to Japan during the Korean War, the people we were not in the big cities. We were out. And the people there had all the respect in the world for us. And they didn't have any bitter feelings towards us.
Did you,
And I didn't have any against them. Because they were doing what they were forced to do. And a lot of times people change when they get out of that yoke. And they're not having to do it anymore. They go back to their normal life. And it was only your big wartime top flight generals and things, military strategists that wanted war. They wanted to take the war on it. They found out later they couldn't do it. And I think the first bomb that was dropped, the atom bomb, we can go back and say a little bit more about what would have happened if they hadn't dropped the bomb and they tried the invasion. It was out that every prisoner of war in Japan would have been killed. So Truman took this into consideration. And we'll drop the bomb and see what affects us. And it was done about 150 miles from us, where our camp was. And we thought it was an earthquake.
oh, you could feel the effects of
The
it.
shocks. It created an earthquake, and we didn't know what it was. And then when they dropped the second one, which was several days later, then that Japan said, "Okay, you don't have to invade. We surrender."
Jimmy himself said it's bitter towards the Japanese. He could not hold him that in. You have to forgive and forget. A lot of them are still so bitter about it. That's the hard thing.
No, when I went back in Japan in 1950, 52, 54, I learned that they weren't that bitter against us either. That our military was in there to help them and to keep the Koreans from coming over.
Had you always been a member of the church, Jim? Had you always been a member of the church, or
This church?
No, well, no, I mean.
Oh yeah, I was born and baptized a Catholic
I see.
in New Orleans, and when my dad moved to Natchez, he remarried and moved to Natchez when I was 8 years old, and then I was brought up in the Methodist church there, and then when I went to service in San Fernando, I went to the Lutheran church, and our three boys were baptized in the Lutheran church in Stillwell, Georgia. Grace Lutheran Church.
But what you're getting at is,
Did faith have anything to do with your stamina, or kind of what happened to that faith during that time?
I think they were very, you could see them reading the Bible, New Testament. Yeah. I read the New Testament completely through. And that's the only thing we had. And like I said, it could have helped. And maybe I didn't realize it at the time, but I think it did. I can look back now that seen a lot of them did that. We had Catholic chaplains, we had Methodists, Baptist chaplains.
now these were chaplains who were there in the camps.
Not in any camp I was in,
Oh,
but they were in some of the
some of
camps.
the camps.
But
Who's that?
General Taylor,
He was captured.
he was a chaplain, and I have his book autographed. We met him up in Montana Village.
Oh,
I'll tell you a little story. My son, youngest son, lives in Lubbock. He gave me 17 books for Christmas. All about the POWs out in the Pacific.
I'm not on the about war.
Well, that's all by POWs in the war, World War II in the Pacific. And with that addition, now I have 50 books.
My goodness.
50 books of POWs. And if you ever get a chance, there's one book I recommend you read. It's Death March by Don Knox. He was a public relations employee with a TV station in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And he would come down to our reunions and talk with us, tape it. And he went back and he wrote the book. But it's written different from what most of the books are. It's individuals sitting there talking together.
It's like that.
Just like this. And I'm in there with this friend of mine from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, Captain.
Yeah, you were going to get for that address.
Yeah.
We can get that.
It's in the, I think it's in the POW book, the big book. I'll give you the name and
Okay.
address. He's a retired professor from the University at Murfreesboro.
But we think he's still alive. He hasn't been to the last few reunions.
And,
He's old. And, he was
He
there
was
the
in
last
charge
time
of
I
the
saw him.
first work detail I was on.
Well, he was on this,
He was in charge of it, and
one with the band in the
Yeah.
shop.
yeah, with the first bridge detail. And we've got to be real good friends, and through the reunions and all. But he and I are sitting there talking about this execution. And,
And that's the
yeah, but that's the whole book is all about it. Then it tells about how some of them got away down on Mindanao, escaped and went to the guerrillas.
Oh,
Anna, how do you feel towards the Japanese for what they did to Jim? That must have been a terrible shock when you
At
saw
the time I hated them. Because one of the things I was making what we call a crazy quilt. We did all that embroidery on. Every stitch I took, I was fighting the Japanese. But now, no, I work with Japanese girls. They were. We don't buy Japanese cars, so we don't go out of our way to do anything like that. But cars hate, I can't say I hate. Like Jimmy says, they were doing their job. They had to do that. We would have probably done the same thing. We might not have been as cruel.
but they weren't all cruel.
No.
And there probably were some Allied forces that were cruel.
Right. We see it was different, start telling you about a different culture. They believed in dying for the emperor.
Yeah.
They didn't believe in being captured. They died for the emperor.
It's the old samurai system that they had, that it was a dishonor to surrender.
So that's why some of those guards, you see, I think probably mean, well, gee, you gave up. We'll treat you bad.
But I could,
Mhm.
It's said that in so many ways in books. I've got a book though that I bought not too long ago at a book sale, one of my, the history of World War II. It gives all from the day it started to the end, and each theater period and so forth. And I got another book that I bought up in Mariveles, Tennessee, the air combat units of World War II. And the 27th, you see that from the day it was formed. How it went from light bomb and transferred back to the States, became heavy bomb, went to North Africa. Still heavy bomb in Europe, came back to the States, went to Austin, Texas, 27 Fighter Escort Wing, which I went back to. After I left it, went to 27 Tactical Fighter Wing at Clovis, New Mexico. And now since SAC and TAC are together as Air Combat Command, it's 27 Fighter Wing, the same colors and standards that we had in the beginning. Still active.
My goodness.
Can you say whether the boys, your three sons, have any feelings inside? Do they talk? Or you said for 20 years Jimmy really didn't talk much, so other than they knew Dad was nervous.
Well, they knew that he'd been a I mean, I told him that, but he didn't just, like this, he never talked to him about it. So years later, let's see, you bought a book that one of your Sam Moody that was in your outfit that wrote, so he bought a copy of that book.
Well,
He
that's
sent one
John
to each-
Knox, that one. And it, well,
Sam Moody's book.
Oh, yeah.
You bought a copy for each month, and you sent it to each one of them, and you told them that this is what I couldn't talk about.
So they finally were able to get some idea.
The youngest one knows all about it.
this death march that I was telling you about, he brought a copy of it, brought it home. He said, I've got something special for you. I said, what is it? He handed it to me. It was Christmas time. I says, you keep that one. I have 2 copies that the publisher gave us.
But he knows more about it than the others.
He reads all of
He's
those
still
books.
single, you know.
He reads them all.
And I think the others know now.
Bo knows a lot more about it.
The oldest one, he really can't take it. That was just too cruel.
And we were in Dallas one day. You remember that one day? Ruth's sister-in-law asked me if I'd sit down and talk to them about it, about what I went through. I told them yes, and I think they smiled. Like, okay.
That was some of your first
Yeah.
talking about it.
That's some of the start.
Mhm.
And they used to always call me, what, triple dipper. And after that, they never used that word again. Triple dipper.
Double it.
Triple dipper.
Is there anything else that you want to say about your experiences during the war or after?
I think when the people go in when they're young, they learn a lot. They don't realize it at the time. Till later, after they get out, then they realize what they actually learned.
So what do you think you learned?
I learned that the American soldiers don't have to be ordered to survive. They have the initiative to do it on their own. And this is what surprised the Japanese so much. Like, if you were told to take a certain place, you'd look at the area before you got to it and say, well, what's the easiest and the safest way to go protect that place? And what the Americans would do, they'd take the least expected way to do it. And this is what surprised all the foreign armies. Instead of going way around here, straight across is the shortest route. And this would surprise me. And that's the way the Americans did it. And they didn't have to be told, they had the initiative to do it on their own. Whereas the Japanese, they were ordered to do something, they did it. They had to follow orders. But if we had orders and we could see that it wasn't going to work, we could suggest a different route.
See, that was the big difference between the American soldiers and the Japanese and perhaps the Germans.
That's right.
And that is what really helped the prisoners because they were able to use initiative and able to think for themselves.
That's right.
Considered survivors.
Yeah,
Like I said,
certainly were.
most of us were young.
And
There was a few older men there, but most of us were in our early 20s and some teens. And they looked at it and said, well, another challenge. He says, how can I succeed?
mhm.
And you stop and think on your own to do it. That's the whole difference between the Americans and the rest of the world. The whole difference. Even in Europe.
Now, you're talking about the war. Are you talking about since the
The
war?
initiative to do something to be told.
And you're talking about that as a characteristic of Americans nowadays too.
Yes. Because they want things a certain way, they're going to do it that way.
Mhm.
Well, we certainly thank you for taking this time to share
Well,
with us, and we're sure that our son-in-law will appreciate.
Did you go through all these questions?
pretty much. I think we covered all the things that he wanted us to. So I'm sure the University of Tennessee.
Has a lot of editing to do on that.
Thanks you. No, this tape is going into the archives as is, and Kent will listen to it and get the information that he needs from it. So, well, thank you. I want this recorded. We certainly appreciate it. This is just a word of explanation. We spoke earlier about a guard in an interpreter in one of the camps who had been born in the United States, called back to Japan for schooling, and then was sent to be an interpreter in this camp. For some reason, after the war, he returned to the United States, and a former prisoner in the camp where he had interpreted saw him, reported him to the police. He was arrested and tried for treason since he was an American citizen. He was convicted and he was sentenced to death. President Eisenhower commuted his sentence to life imprisonment, and President Kennedy pardoned him to the extent that he could be exiled to Japan and never allowed to return to the United States. Jim went to California and testified in that trial. He has a whole scrapbook of clippings and information about it.